Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop, and in this week's video we're going to be taking this newly purchased pile of planed smooth timber and turning it into a basic wooden box. Let's get making. So for this week's video, fellow woodworkers, I wanted to try a project that I've never done before and something sort of slightly different to what I normally do. Now on YouTube, there are lots and lots of woodworkers who set challenges for another, make something out of a pallet, make something out of a piece of wood this length, do something with recycled wood. But I thought I would buy myself a pack of plain smooth timber, which is what I've got here. Now this pack is 18mm by 70mm. It's a whole pack, a whole strip. It took me quite a long time in the big box store that I got it from, the big orange one, you'll know who it is. It took me quite a long time to find one where most of the wood was relatively straight and it wasn't sort of cupped, and I've got one piece in there which isn't great, but it seems to be more at one end or the other. So in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to make lots of different things only using this wood, nothing else. I mean, I might use some fixings, but I'm not going to use any of my wood that I've got lying around the garage workshop. I'm just going to use this wood for projects, and I'm going to see how many projects I can make of it before it completely disappears. Now, today's project is something that I've been wanting to make for quite a long time. It's just a really bog standard box. And it's actually not something I think I've ever made on the garage workshop, not with a lid anyway. So I'm going to use this as my wood. I've got an idea in my mind about how I want the box to look, but I'm going to do something slightly different. I've seen quite a lot of videos on YouTube recently of people that make whole boxes and then cut them to make the lid and the bottom half. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm also going to use a tool in this week's video which I'm not sure has been on the garage workshop before. If it has, it was probably a while ago and it was only the one. So the first thing I need to do is mark up this wood and then get cutting on the miter saw before we start joining it. Let's do that now. So as I've tended to do recently, I spent quite a long time measuring all of my wood for this project. With only those 4 pieces, I was trying to see if I could get this whole box out of one. It was become apparent that wasn't going to happen. So then I tried to see if I could get it out of 2, which I did in the end. I've just got a few little bits left. But this was, you can see me looking up, this was before we had the epic disaster which befell with the electricity, which I will explain. Okay, so fellow woodworkers, this project was originally supposed to be done via my miter saw. I've just come on to use my miter saw and it's not working. Every time I press the button to get it going, it starts, but it's constantly tripping the electrics in my house. It's never done that before, and I don't know if it's the fact that the miter saw is on its way out or if it's got a loose connection. So I've tried it on different plug sockets. I've tried it on an extension lead, but wherever I put it, as soon as I press the power down, it's killing the whole power for my garage workshop. So if you've got any idea what that could be, please pop it in the comments below. But it does mean I am going to have to do this build old school. So I'm going to use my tried and tested Parkside plunge saw, and hopefully with a bit of luck that will get me through, because there's quite a lot of cuts that I need to make, but some of them I can do on the table saw. This first set of cuts from actually making the shape of the box is the key one. So let's break out the plunge saw, let's see if we can get it working. We then had a gothic shower which stopped work in the workshop. When I did get started, I resorted to my trusty Parkside plunge saw. Unfortunately, it was me that was using it, so I'm still very, very limited in terms of the quality of cuts. I'm going to come up with a jig for this, like I've done for my other saw, because using the rails isn't always convenient. And for something like this, just a really, really quick and simple jig or some sort of way of clamping it would have been much, much better, because the quality of cuts was a bit naive. Next thing I did was just knock off the ends with a sandpaper. This is the sandpaper block that I reviewed in last week's video, the week before's video. Really good, that little plastic block. I must print out a better one. I then reached for this. Now this tool, which is the Erbauer biscuit joiner, you are going to see this a lot in this video. I bought it just before COVID. It cost me $49.99 on sale, and I've used it about half a dozen times maybe. I absolutely love it. For me, it does the same job as a much more expensive biscuit joiner. The only thing is, of course, it's not a Festool Domino joiner, but to be honest with you, it does a really, really good job, as you see there. Nice clean cuts, and not too powerful, not difficult to use in any means, and a powerful enough unit that it does exactly what I need it to do. And as you can see, it's multi-directional. You can do different cuts, you can do all sorts, but a nice clean hole cut on all of them. These are the Parkside dominoes. I have got some other, biscuits. I have got some other ones, actually more expensive ones that I bought on Amazon, which were probably 3 times the price, and they're really poorly fitting. The wood is slightly different, but this biscuit set that I got from Lidl, I just cannot recommend it highly enough. They're absolutely awesome, those little biscuity biscuits of wood. So after I'd joined one side, I went on to join the other. Did have too much glue here, as you can see. More spill out than you can shake a stick at, and that does come back to haunt me a little bit later when I try and unhook the wood without my knowledge it's stuck. And I know some people use like cling film and things like that. I've never really done any of that, but perhaps I should. The next thing I did was mark out the end of that offcut of wood, and this is for the sort of ends of the box if they were the sides that I had just made. Again, I went back to the plunge saw, which I'm not going to lie, I was struggling to sort of get it to work properly whilst keeping it straight. And as you can see, I sort of set up this system to try and get around the issue, but to be honest, the quality of cuts was really not very good. I was very unhappy. So either I need a little bit more practice, or it just wasn't the right way of doing it. And knowing my luck, it's probably both. Now, here I did have a problem. I had a little bit of kickback, which I actually think saved me in the end, because you can see that didn't go all the way through. Had I not had that, I wouldn't have been able to turn it around and cut it from the other side, which luckily I'd sort of realised just in enough time to save the cut, and then I was able to just use my Japanese pull saw to just knock the end of it there, which I needed to do. So as you will have just seen on the video there, one of the sections when I was using the plunge saw has torn a huge tear out, which on its own isn't so much of a problem because I can get around that by putting it on the inside. But what is more of an issue is, I'm not sure if you can see that, but the cut is angled. It's not flat. It's obviously sort of skewed it. Now, all of the other pieces that I've got, they're all, thankfully, realistically, they're all pretty similar in size. But to be honest with you, they're not great. And one of them, this one, is significantly smaller than the others. So what I'm going to do is carry on as planned. I'm going to glue and join all these together now, because they all need to glue overnight anyway. So when I've got them all about the right size, I know that I've got my table saw, and I think hopefully that's working, and that's not going to blow the electric. So I know I've got my table saw, and I can just run all of these through my table saw to get the right edges on them. But this is one of the things, if you haven't got all the tools that I am very fortunate to have, you know, you might be doing this project in a very similar way. The problem is I'm not used to doing projects like this, so as a result it is becoming a little bit more complicated. But this is the garage workshop, and as you know from my videos, I'm not going to not put in the mistakes, but what it is clear that I need to do now is get these done, get these hooked up, get them to dry, and I'm going to give them a good amount of time. I'll probably even leave them overnight to dry, and then I can start thinking about my second section. But tomorrow the table saw is going to have to cut all of these off, and this one that's slightly angled, I'm probably going to lose a couple of mil there of the size that I wanted. And as you can see how this is going to work, the box is going to be pretty narrow as it is. This is the smallest one of all of them here, and originally I wanted them all to be 12 centimeters, and that's 11.4. Now the way that I'm going to make and join the box, this is going to sort of sit inside the other sides. I'm going to cut a groove out of the other sides to seat it in, so it will be sort of a little bit wider. I'll probably only lose a centimetre off each side, but it is going to make the inside a little bit smaller. But for what I'm going to use the box for, which is probably going to be, you know, pencils and things like that, or possibly screws, it hasn't got to be massive. It's more the length that's most important for me. I might even put my glue sticks in it if, you know, if they fit. But for me, getting this bit right is really, really pivotal. So what I'm going to do is get all of the edges that are the straightest edges, line them all up, and then I'm going to mark off for the dominoes on the domino joiner. So let's hook them up together now and see how they look. The next stage was just to line up the position for the biscuits on the sort of ends, if you see what I mean. And obviously only one biscuit on these, because the pieces of wood are so much shorter, you wouldn't need two biscuits. I mean, I could have gone for two smaller ones, and I should have mentioned earlier that all of the biscuits that you see in this video are 20mm biscuits. This machine goes as low as 15, I think. It might even go as low as 10. But the biscuits come in different sizes, different sort of shape holes. So I hooked them all together exactly as I had. I hadn't learnt my issue about the glue, because I still over glued them. But I used these weights that I've mentioned in previous videos that I just got on sale in Aldi. They're sort of middle of Aldi, you know, the special buys. And when they sell them off, when they don't sell, I mean, I paid like a couple of quid for this whole pack. I then took everything outside. This is the next day, as you can see. I haven't got my Save Ferris t-shirt on. I then took them outside and unhooked everything in the hope that I'd managed to keep everything as flat as possible. I then got the plunge saw out and again tripped the electric. This was becoming more and more of a very, very annoying issue, and I just could not work out what it was. I thought it was the extension lead, so then I went and plugged it in the side, reset the trip switch, and it went again. It was just an absolute nightmare, to be honest with you. But then I decided to switch everything off, put everything back on, and miraculously it all came back up and worked as if it had worked from new. It's alive, it's alive, it's alive. Okay, so fellow woodworkers, a little bit of an update. I've just reset all the fuse switches in the house, and fingers crossed, it seems to have temporarily fixed the problem. At least, and as you saw, I was just able to use my motor, so I was actually using it as I was testing it. But now I have got all of the bits cut, and the box is going to be very shallow, I think, unless I go for some sort of fixing like that. But to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to like that. My original plan was to cut a wedge out of here and just sink it a bit, but if I do, I'm going to lose quite a bit of depth of the box. So I think, thinking on my feet slightly, I think I might have to just go for connecting that box in a slightly different way. Now, the only other thing that's worrying me is this piece of wood is quite bowed. So if I put that on there, you can probably see, hopefully, that it's out of line by at least a couple of mil, which is not good. I mean, I could correct that if I screwed the box in, but to be honest with you, I really didn't want to do that. So I've got two options. I can either break the wood apart, re-glue it, and hope it glues flatter, or I can just put in a couple of screws, like pocket holes on the inside, to hook it together, because the other side is nowhere near as bad. It's a little bit, but only a mil or so. So what I might have to do is just put in a pocket hole on either side and just use that to hook it, so there is one screw in it. You saw from the glue up, I mean, it's not, you know, we're not even talking a millimetre there, and I think if I re-glue it, A, I'm going to have to wait a long time for it to glue, and B, I'm not actually sure it's going to be any better, because obviously these have got biscuits in them, so I don't really think that's going to work. So I think what I might try and do is put a pocket hole in them, then try and see if I can level it off by hooking it together with a pocket hole. So, you know, if I can almost like straighten this by pocket holing it. And the other thing is, I think I am just going to fix it on the end either side, because I'm just going to lose too much space if I don't. So this is an adapting project. One of the projects where potentially before I would have given up, but no, I'm going to finish this box. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be at the end. I know I can at least get something in it, which is really good, but I've measured my glue sticks and they're too long to fit in it. But I know I can put something in it. So I'm going to now pocket hole these and let's see if I can tighten the box by pocket holding them and putting them in. And the other thing is, obviously this box is going to have a bottom in it made of this wood. So if I cut that the correct length as well, by default, a bottom and a top, by default, it's going to help tie that wood in to where it should be, because I'm going to cut the box, the bottom of the box, exactly the right width it should be. So it could almost be that I do that and I hook that in first, which I was always going to do with pocket holes at the bottom, because obviously you're not going to see that at all. So it might be that I do it and pocket hole it, and then by default that will bring the side in. But the good thing is these two bits are really, really straight. There's no sort of cupping of them at all. So fingers crossed, when I've got the bottom and the top cut, we'll be able to move on. The other thing is, you'll probably have seen from the glue up, I did take a piece of the stuff it was glued to off. So what I'm going to do is just run the sander over the whole thing when it's done. So next stage, actually I think the next thing I'm going to do is marker, measure and cut out the bottom and the top while I've managed to get my miter saw to work. So let's do the measuring, cut those out. So now I'm on my second piece of wood. I've only got a couple of offcuts from that first piece left, literally a couple of small offcuts. So let's get the second piece of wood out, let's get this accurately measured, and let's start cutting it. I'm now going to utter the immortal sentence, never has one man been made so happy by an electronic power tool. I then marked off the sides again, and this time I was sharpening them up. Now that I knew I had the saw working, I then went about making the sides and the sort of the top and the bottom. I wasn't happy with the ends, and you'll see in a minute I decided to redo those. But this bit that you can see here is the sort of innard, the top and the bottom. And again, I'm just hooking up more places for the biscuit joiner, and after that I went back to the biscuit joiner and put all of the biscuits in. I do enjoy using this. It's very, very easy to use, and for what is a quality thing that you get at the end of it, and it makes the joints super, super strong. So if you are thinking about one and you're undecided, if you'd like my recommendation, I would say it's a definite yes. In fact, I probably should do a 10-minute tool review about the biscuit joiner, because it is like a brand new tool to me, because I've barely used it. This was also the point where I realised I'm so glad I spent all that money on clamps the last time they were in Aldi. Although these aren't the best clamps in the world, don't get me wrong, I have got quite a lot of them, and this has also made me think I probably need some more clamps. You know what they say about woodworkers, you can never have too many clamps, can you? But as you can see, I put all of my clamps to the test. I'd worked out now the better way to clamp them, and that's to use those strong metal ones on the top and then the plastic sort of other clamp from the sides. I then went back this time to make new ends. As I said, I wasn't happy with the depth of the box. I just thought it was too small, so I broke into the new piece of wood and then I glued everything up, and pretty much every clamp I've got is here for you to see. And then I just did a little sort of dry mock-up to see if it would work and to see if the top and bottom sections would fit in. It went together okay when I'd hooked it up sort of dry-wise. And then the middle bit, when I put it in, it went all the way through. So I was very pleased with how that turned out. As you can see, a little bit stuck there. But the top also fit in. And because of the nature of this box, I was going to make it all in, seal it in, and then cut it on the table saw. We then had the glorious pocket hole moment. I didn't put in my dust extraction here, and it really surprised me watching the footage back how much dust and sawdust that thing actually makes. It kicks out loads and loads. But I got them all jointed. I got them as close to the edge as I could, and on one of them I didn't realise I'd gone a bit too close, and you'll see in a minute that that decision comes back to bite me. quite significantly because I split the wood right on the end, which is really, really unfortunate. You can just about see it there. So this is on a time lapse, and I'm glad it is, because it's caught a mistake, a huge mistake, which when I was doing it I couldn't see. As you can see from me sticking it there, I've stuck the bottom onto the side. Luckily no harm done, and I was able to just flick it over and stick it all on. Now when I put this all together it was fine, but the thing about pocket hole screws is when you tighten them up it really pulls the material in. So I basically had to be very, very careful. But when I stuck it all together, I just put it in all the clamps and then left it to dry. So while I was trying new techniques, I stuck a little bit of wood here, and this is the tear out, and I just mixed together the sawdust that had come out of the biscuit joiner with some wood glue, and just made like a little paste. I mean, I wasn't even sure if I was doing this properly. I don't know if I had enough glue or what, but basically I just mixed up like a little woodeny type paste, and I shoved it in the hole and in the join, and I have to say it has actually stuck remarkably well. I'm not sure what it'll be like tomorrow, but it did stick quite well, and it filled the gap quite nicely, and hopefully when I sand it down you won't be able to see that cut out as much. When I'd left it to dry for a while, I then unclamped it all. It took quite a while to unclamp it all, but it was at least rigid, it was nicely stuck, and it was ready to go through the final stage, which of course was putting it through the table saw. But you can see a couple of gaps, I know, but a completely lined box. Now this, I wasn't even the least bit concerned about doing this. I just knew it would work. What I didn't know is how accurate it would be, and I've got to be honest, I am really, really pleased with how accurate this cut was, considering it's really a basic a table saw, this one. It's maybe one level above basic, but it is pretty basic. And the cut, the final cut, was actually really good. There are a couple of little bits that you can see there which I knocked off with a sander, but on the whole I was really impressed with that cut. I was really pleased, and I thought, oh, it's worked out nicely, exactly as I imagined. Now this bit with the hinges, this is the first time I've put hinges in anything like this. It's the first time I've tried to conceal them. It's the first time I've used a chisel, and oh my life does it not show when you see this. I tried my best. At first I used my older chisel, which clearly wasn't man enough for the job because I couldn't get it to work. And what I'd done is I'd set the depth to half the depth of the hinges, but that was just wrong. It just didn't work properly. I think I sunk it too far. And when I realised that I was trying to use a blunt chisel, which also didn't help, I then went to my new DeWalt chisels, and it's the first time I've used them, and my goodness, they're sharp. That chisel could literally take someone's head off, but it was a lot easier when I did it that way. So I also used the drill bits that I got in my American video, the self-centering sort of drill bits. They worked an absolute treat. And when I'd hollowed it out on both sides, I fixed in using the screws. I realised after this I probably shouldn't have used the electric screwdriver, so I didn't for this one. Now to get it level, I just put some double-sided tape, which unfortunately wasn't quite strong enough. It was enough for me to make the marks, but it wasn't really strong enough for me to do the drilling. And then I took out the section for the upper bit. This bit I think I actually got right. I think these are the right depth, because they match the sort of width of the top of the hinge. It's the other ones that are too deep. But first time I've done it, and you live and learn, don't you? And to be honest with you, it was the actual experience of doing it more than how well it looked or how well it came out. I luckily measured and cut out correctly with the chisel, so this was just a case of lining it up. And again, at this point I think I realised I really shouldn't be using an electronic screwdriver for this. It's much better to use one. So I went and grabbed a normal hand screwdriver, and I screwed the screws in both sides, and you can't really see it very clearly in this filming, but I really leveled up those hinges. They were sat beautifully in the hole that I'd used the chisel to carve out for them. The only problem is obviously the corresponding ones on the main part of the box, which you can see there, were too deep, and I don't know how I did that. Well, I do, but I'm not sure how I did it, because I did accurately mark it. But it is just one of those things, you know, as you put in hinges, I'm sure you get better with them over time, and let's face it, Can't really get any worse than this, but they do work. They are functional, and although the box doesn't close, it's pretty good, I have to say. I did like ease them back off a little bit, and that got the box to close a lot more than it had before, so not too bad in the end. So, fellow woodworkers, the box is finished after what has been what I can only describe as an epic video. This is probably the most problem-plagued video that I've ever made on the Garage Workshop. And if you think back to all my failures, that is actually saying something. Besieged by electrical problems, besieged by the weather, besieged by the complete and utter lack of knowledge, but I've got a box at the end of it. It's as rough as a pub's carpet, but I have got it. It does work. Now, unfortunately, it does not close 100%, and I think the reason for that is that I've chiseled in too deep here. I've gone too deep on this hinge. It should have been a bit shallower, and the same on the second one. Hopefully you can see that. So this one's too deep. It's deeper than this one, but it is the first time I've ever used a chisel to chisel out something like that. I've only ever used chisels really when I'm demolishing stuff and breaking bigger bits of wood. It's the first sort of intricate or fine work I've ever done. The actual rest of the box is okay. It needs a sand. It's got quite a bit of wood glue, but if you think this is just made from pieces of plain smooth sawn timber, it's actually not that bad at all. And I'm going to actually put one of those clasps on it, which will pull it shut. So off camera, I'm going to just flatten it all out, level it all out. I filled a little bit of a gap in there. You probably saw that in the video, hopefully. I filled that gap in, and I'll just smooth all that out. But to be honest with you, I'm really impressed. I mean, it's not great. I'll probably give it a 6 out of 10. But in terms of my skill level and what I learned between there and now, I just think it's fantastic. And the most important thing is, I've acquired a lot of new skills. Hopefully you all have acquired a lot of things from watching this video that you shouldn't do, but the thing that makes me the most pleased was pretty much going through the table saw. It came out okay. There's a tiny little gap there. I think you can probably see it. There's a tiny little gap there, but overall not too bad. And I am actually going to go and fill the top bits in where there's those couple of gaps, but I you know, as a learning curve, brilliant. If you watch this video, this is probably not the way to do it. I'm sure you can find loads of other good videos on YouTube, but overall, very pleased that I've actually made something as a result of it. If this is your first time at the Garage Workshop, then thank you so much for watching the video. Please can I ask you to subscribe, like and comment. You may have seen from my YouTube short yesterday that I've now reached 1,000 viewers, which is unbelievable to me, unbelievable. So if you are new, please like, comment, it helps the algorithm. If you are a regular viewer, thank you so much, guys. You are the reason that I am here sitting with 1,000 viewers, which is amazing. I never thought I'd get 100 subscribers, let alone 1,000. So also don't forget to like and comment, and thank you very much for watching the video. So from me and the amazing Mr. Box, we'll catch you on next week's video. Take care, fellow woodworkers.